Well, hello. I'm Lynda Lamp, and I'm here for our live Q&A session. I don't have any live questions yet, but I do have a couple of things we were going to talk about. One of the things that I had mentioned on Sunday when I did the reading, one of the sections I was reading was talking about coincidences. And I wanted to share this Einstein quote, Albert Einstein quote with you. He said, "Coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous." And I think that that's a great summary of what my personal experience of coincidences have been. And there's one coincidence of my life that really, I think, takes the cake. And I'll share that with you while we're waiting for some questions. I grew up knowing that the man that was married to my mom was not my biological dad. And in my entire life, I've always had this understanding. And then one day, I got on Ancestry.com. And about 2 years ago, I think it was around October, and maybe it was 3 years ago, a gentleman got a hold of me and said that he thought I was his wife's first cousin. And it turns out he was right. I am his wife's first cousin. Here's the coincidence. The man, the husband, and I went to the same elementary school at the same time. We weren't in the same grade, but at the very same time, when I was 5 and 6 going to elementary school in the Bronx, he was going to the same elementary school. How he came to be married to my biological cousin that I never knew, although the whole side of the family I never knew, it's like the biggest coincidence in the world. And that's why I love this quote from Einstein saying that it's God's way of remaining anonymous, because that's certainly my experience of coincidences. Let's see. So I did have one other thing we could talk about. And for those of you that are watching, I'm really glad you're here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to submit them via text. And if you don't want to do it that way, you could text me at 907-351-3003, and I have that device right here. And so I could get the question and then respond to you. You can also always email your questions to questions@walkingthroughyourwalls.com. Unfortunately, I don't have access to that email on these devices that I brought with me. I'm not 100% prepared. I did check it about an hour or two ago, and there weren't any questions that had been submitted. So, but do feel free. And in the future, I'll have that device with me. I'll have a device that can access that email as well. I did want to talk a little bit about a question that came in last week that I answered on the fly, but I've given some more thought to, and so I thought I might add a little more to it. So the question was, how do I balance my time with others so that I'm not distracted by the needs of others and thus avoiding working on my own stuff? So this has got a couple of layers to it, because when we're trying to grow, when we're working on ourselves and working to change things about ourselves that we feel need change, right? We want to be more open-hearted. We want to be kinder. We want to be more compassionate, more empathetic, more forgiving. All of those endeavors to improve ourselves can receive interference from ourselves. And that has to do with the way we actually are. Like, we are not the housing. Right? We reside within this housing, and we're not the housing. But the housing comes with certain tendencies and wirings. And one of the best examples of what I'm getting at here is a little story I can share. I've done a lot of work with a gentleman by the name of Ken Stone. He's the soul archaeologist. And whenever he was introducing a new program, a new class or a new program or a new workshop, he would, explain it all, and he'd be done. And I'd be sitting there going, I don't get it. Like, I couldn't follow it. And it wasn't the way he was describing it. It was me. And what was happening is that our egos, which are the wiring, right? There is the psychological Freudian ego, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual wiring part of the ego, the part of your body that keeps you safe, that's wired to keep you safe and protect you. And what happens is our egos, we don't, as humans, not the beings, but the human body does not like change. It's very disruptive to the ego when things change, because the ego would like things to just be exactly the way they are. And I know how that is, and I know how that works, and I know what to do. And the minute we start to go changing things, like trusting people more, or putting ourselves out there more, or opening ourselves up to new ideas, it triggers the ego, because the ego sees that as a threat. What will happen to me if you learn this new thing? If you learn this new way of being, where do I fit into all of this? That's the wiring response. And so a lot of times what happens is, in relationship to this question, we can allow ourselves to become distracted so that we aren't working on our own stuff. It becomes an easy out. Like, I really know I should be working on being more loving, but let me go help this other person with their problem instead. And so that's what came up for me afterwards, to supplement the question or the answer that I gave earlier. Being distracted keeps the ego safe. So I see we still have 3 people with us. I don't have any new questions submitted. I do apologize. I am going to have to use my Kleenex there. The other question that did come in between last Tuesday and today was how I came to write the book. And we've touched on that a little in the past, but I'll try and give like a succinct, complete answer here while we're waiting, and hopefully some more questions will come in, because if not, when I finish this story, we'll go ahead and wrap up, because I'm not prepared to sit here and just talk off the cuff for an hour without some additional questions. So how I came to write the book, Walking Through Your Walls, Loving Yourself and Everyone Else. And for those of you that have not seen a copy, this is a paperback copy. There's also a hardback copy and ebook and Kindle as well. I think I've mentioned in the past that my entire life I've been told by people that I should write a book. You should write your life story. That's what people always said. Well, and a lot of times they would just say, oh, you should write a book. And I think my assumption was always that it would be the kind of book that other people told me to write, which was my life story. So my whole life I've known that, okay, at some point I'm supposed to write a book. And even though they told me this, it also resonated with me. It felt right. It felt accurate. And I've certainly started writing multiple times throughout my life. And then, and I've always been on this path of why am I here, right? I came into the world knowing two things. I'm supposed to do something and I'm supposed to find someone. I found that person. It took me a long time, but I did finally find them. I think I found them in 1998. And we ended up getting married in 2001. What I didn't know at the time was that I had married the person I was supposed to find. And I often wonder about that. Why did it take me so long to figure that out? But timing in this third dimensional realm is everything. And had I couldn't have known it. It's just like when I was little, I could not have known that what people were saying was lamp, right? I had to hear lamb at the time. If I had heard lamp at the time, it would have interfered with my entire life. Like, my ego probably would have never allowed me to fulfill my destiny because I would have been so full of myself. So this is the same thing. I married Paul in 2001, and yet it wasn't until 2009 that I actually realized that the whole confluence of my life had come together and that I actually had found the person that I had come here to find. I almost said sent here because it feels like that. It feels like I was sent here because I didn't. In the conversations that I had before I came here, I didn't want to come. And it was only the fact that this person said they would come here with me and help me that I agreed to come. And so in many ways, it does feel like I was sent here, even though I did ultimately agree to come here. So now it's 2009. And I finally have figured out that, oh, gee, this is the person. Not long before that, I had started some meditation. Actually, maybe the meditation started right around the same time. Obama was elected in 2008. And I try not to be political in these conversations, but there are certain things as they impact my life where I can't leave it out. The story wouldn't make any sense. So I have always, from the youngest child that I can remember, I have always loved this country, and at the same time have recognized that this country is hypocritical. It's hypocritical in its foundation, and it's been living with hypocrisy inside of it for hundreds of years now. So, centuries. So even though I've loved this country, I've also known that this country has a wound, like a core wound. When you work a lot with spiritual healers, you'll hear that term, core wound. Like, what is your core wound? You have to heal it. Well, our hypocrisy is America's core wound. And not long after Obama got elected, it became very clear that even though he won, there were many people in this country who didn't like the fact that he'd won, and their problem with him was his color. And that struck me to my heart. And so I started this meditation. How do we create a world that works for everyone? And this is a meditation that I would hold this meditation when I walked. I was at that point walking twice a day to the beach. I live not far from the beach, and it would make a beautiful walking meditation. And I would meditate it on other times as well. And slowly, answers started to come through. Slowly, a story came through and an acronym. So the answer to how do we create a world that works for everyone is we love us. That's the answer. It's the actual answer to the question. We love us. And that was broken down into 8 action statements. And the beginning letter of each action statement spells we love us. And I'll give them to you. Weave a fabric of unity and peace worldwide. Embrace Earth as irreplaceable and all life with respect. Love and forgive everyone unconditionally. Offer openness, honesty, truth, and transparency. Volunteer and serve others. Ensure everyone gets a voice and vote. Unite the divided with infinite love. Solve our problems together. So it's kind of radical because it's a really simple answer and they're really simple concepts. And if we were to all live using those 8 action statements as our guide, pretty much overnight we would have a world that worked for everyone. So it's easy to see that we're not that far off. We haven't wandered that far afield at this point to be able to create the world that we actually came here to create, which is heaven on earth. That's what we're here for, is to create the environment of heaven on earth. That's why we're in form. So here's another coincidence I'll share. I have no idea how, why, or where the Obama second inaugural committee got my phone number. But I was walking back from the beach one day, and the phone rings. This was, I guess, late December of 2011. And it was the inaugural committee asking me if I would like to volunteer for Obama's second inaugural event in Washington. And of course, I said yes. And so what I did on that trip is and it's fairly uncharacteristic for me because I tend to be relatively shy. And I also tend not to like to be around a lot of people because the energy of a lot of people is very difficult for me to handle. But I went and I used the opportunity to walk around Washington, D.C. and ask people, well, what if there was a new political party? What if the political party was called Love Us? What would your reaction be? And, you know, people were really quite open. Like, people recognized that, yeah, he won, but it wasn't the kind of win like the first time. And everyone was very aware that even though he won, that white supremacy in our country was a problem. The hatred was a problem. And so, so I came back from that event and I developed a booklet about We Love Us. And it was my intent to start marketing the concept of We Love Us. But I wasn't going to market it. That wasn't what was happening. What was happening was I was going to mail the booklet to 8 different people, key people in the world. And I was going to And that was it, right? My thought was, I'm going to share this with these people, and that will be it. So on the day that I was going to mail these packets that I had put together, and I made these really cute little half-size 5.5 by 8 booklets. I self-bound them. They were in color, printed on the color laser. They were beautiful. That morning, so it's interesting because the day that this happened was the anniversary of the Exxon Valdez oil spill. And just as I was walking out the door to go for my walk to the beach, I got that kind of feeling that you get when life is trying to tell you you shouldn't leave the house today. Every hair on my body stood up for a moment, and I had the most visceral experience of don't leave the house. But I didn't pay attention to it. And so, and for those of you that have just tuned in, I'm in the midst of answering the question, how did I come to write the book? So we took our walk to the beach, and this was February, I believe. February or March. And I'm in Alaska. So we walk to the beach, we come back. And all I can say is a very cosmically influenced event took place. I caught my toe on a chunk of ice. Now, the part of this story I skipped, which was I had just had my left hip replaced a few weeks earlier. And so we'd gotten up to the point where we were walking to the beach twice a day. Usually when you catch your toe on something, you just fall over. But I didn't fall over. I flew. I flew up into the air, and this whole event took long enough for me to say, oh no, oh no, oh no, 3 times. So I'm flying through the air. The last oh no, I'm on the ground. And I can't get up. I don't know why I can't get up, but I can't get up. My left leg, I can't make my left leg work. So that event, when I really felt into it, into that meditational place, what I discovered was that no, you're not mailing the booklets and handing it off and going about your way, right? This is yours. It's yours to walk out into the world. That was the message. And you know how I know for sure that that was right? Because 2 weeks later, after my shattered femur had been wired back together again, and I got approval to drive, I went to the post office. The packets were all ready. And so I mailed them anyway. Because I thought, all right, well, it may be mine to walk out, but that doesn't mean I can't share it with other people. So I mailed them anyway. You know what the remarkable thing is? So 3 of the packets I mailed to friends. People that have known me, maybe not my entire life, but my entire adult career, let's put it that way. I didn't hear from anybody. Not a single one of them. So that told me, no, this is for you to do. Nobody else is going to do it. Nobody else is going to help you with it. It's for you to do. And then interestingly enough, that's when Ken Stone showed up in my life. I got this email. I don't know where the email came from. These things happen to me all the time, right? I don't know where they got my phone number. I don't know how they got my email, but things show up. And that's the invisible hand of God, basically. That's my interpretation of it. It's the universe saying, here, it's because we're all in a play, right? We're all in this big play. And we each came to play a role. The problem is that we don't get a script when we come out of the womb. Nobody hands you the script and say, here it is. Here's where you go. Here's when you're supposed to show up here, right? And this is what you're supposed to say when you get there. We don't get that. But that's what's happening. There is like an idea of where we're supposed to go and what we're supposed to do. And so I get this email about the soul archaeologist, and I figure, well, you know, I've figured a lot of it out on my own. I've been doing most of my inner work on my own my whole life. Maybe it's time to get some help. And so that's how I first came to work with Ken. And it was through that process that, and then a book coach shows up. And, you know, the pieces just showed up. Here's what's next. Here's what's next. And so that's how I came to sit down to write it. Now, when I sat down to write it, I thought I was sitting down to write something else. I thought I was sitting down to write, you know, the life story that everybody says they want. That's not what came out, as we know. That's not what came out. What came out was this whole other idea of people don't know what's going on here, and somebody has to tell them, and somebody has to tell them the truth about what's going on here. Because there's lots and lots of religious texts out there that will suggest what's going on here. But they don't have the scientific side of it worked out. The scientists don't have the spiritual side of things worked out. And so that's, I guess, the role I'm supposed to play, is to bring the facts and the pieces together with a life of that's been inspired by the divinity to come here and do this in the first place. So that's the answer to that question. Now, I see we've been here for about a half an hour. Some people have come and gone. Some people have been fairly stable, it looks like. But I don't have any questions submitted. And so at this point now, I've run out of things to say. So if you have a question, you can either put it in the chat. You can, and I think, just so you know, I don't think it'll show up for everybody. I think it just shows up on whatever feed you might be in. You can also text me at 907-351-3003. And I have that device right here, and the text would come in here. Thank you, Mary, for letting me know you don't have any questions. That's lovely. And I'll hang here for another minute or two in case somebody does think of something. And then if we don't get any questions submitted in the next couple of minutes, we'll go ahead and wrap it up for today. I do these readings of the book on Sundays at 1 o'clock Alaskan time, which is 5 p.m. Eastern time. And then, I don't have that in front of me, what the Australian and London times are. I know Australia's, I think, 9 in the morning the following day. So if you have not joined for a live reading, you can do that on Sundays. I read live. This next Sunday, I'll start on page 88, which is, I believe it's in the chapter of tracing timelines. Yes, we're about to get into the what happened when, which is not, it's like, it's interesting how little agreement there might be about what happened and when. So we'll dive into that on Sunday. And let me just see. Okay. Nope, no questions yet. So I'm going to go ahead and say thank you all for coming. Namaste. And I'll hope for you to join me again next Tuesday at this time, or to join at the readings on Sunday. So thank you again. Much love. Namaste.